Aside from Asgore running over Noel's non-existent sister, one of my favorite jokes of the Deltarune community is the pure hatred that Sans has been receiving recently. But we're not here to discuss Asgore's broken marriage, specifically, because Chapter 4 also revealed something big that might be the key to connect both Undertale and Deltarune. And of course, Gaster is involved in all of this somehow. This video will be more about speculations more than a concise theory, so without further ado, let's get right into it. The first clue we'll be following is Sans' strange laboratory in Undertale. During the neutral route, the first one will probably play if we do not kill anyone. If we load the game right after Sans explains us how love and EXP works, or the second time we make a non-genocide route, he will give us a key that opens a door behind their house on Snowden. There we'll find what looks like a portion of Alphys' lab. If we interact with the desk, we'll find a photo that reads, "It's a poorly drawn photo of 3 smiling people. Written on it, don't forget." If we come to the same place after completing a pacifist route, we'll find another photo. There's a photo album inside the drawer. There are photos of Sans with a lot of people you do not recognize. And one photo of you standing with Sans and all of your friends. He looks happy. This implies that this version of Sans somehow saved some pictures taken at the end of the pacifist route, and he brought this to the new route somehow. But how did he get hold of these things? It's no secret that Sans is aware of the player loading and saving the game. That's the reason why each time we enter the Judgment Hold, the conversation is slightly different, depending on how many times we've beaten the game or depending on what we do during the route. There's also the fact that he is the one calling Frisk at the end of the neutral route, as if he was judging us and comparing us to the previous times we've completed the game. Nothing new here, of course. And due to one thing that we'll be discussing later, we all thought that this was related to Gaster somehow, but don't get too far ourselves here. What we're trying to prove here is that Sans comes from the Deltarune universe, and thanks to some things revealed to us in recent chapters, we might finally have a way to prove this. As you know, at the end of the genocide route, Sans bleeds when Kara slashes him with a knife, and during a very long time, this was a matter of debate among the community. Some say that this was because he had a pack of ketchup beneath his jacket, because, well, monsters do not bleed. All the enemies we face during the game turn into dust and disappear after defeating them. That's how monsters works in Undertale's universe. And in fact, in Deltarune, the only reason why enemies do not bleed during the weird route is because the darkness are made of darkness, imagination, dreams, determination, or whatever you wanna call it. They are not real things. Although that one is also debatable, but we're not talking about that. But you know who can bleed in Deltarune's universe? The monsters of Hometown, because when Weird Route Chris puts the thorn ring on Noel's finger, she bleeds. And also when Susie breaks the prophecy betrayal on chapter 4. Her fist was drenched in blood, and as if the spot she left on Rose's cheek wasn't dramatic enough, all of this feels like they're leaving the clues right in front of our noses. All these clues might signal that Sans, in fact, comes from the Deltarune universe. There's also that thing with Monsters on Undertale saying that he and Papyrus appeared on Snowden out of nowhere. The words "don't forget" may also tie him with Deltarune universe, and I want to remind you that "Don't Forget" name of a song from the credit of chapter 1. During a very long time, the community believed that those people on the photo were him, Papyrus, and, well, Gaster. It wasn't hard to see why these 3 were related. The 3 were skeletons, and they were the only characters in the game with a font type for name. And as you know, the tools Sans used on the genocide route are named Gaster Blasters on the game files. And the appearance of those things is very similar to the determination machine on Alphys' lab, but we'll get to that later. I want you to focus on the photo. We thought that "Don't Forget" was a reminder of Sans to himself that no matter how many times Kara, Frisk, the human, or whoever you wanna call it, resets the timeline, he will remember why he's doing this, and will find a way to get out of this loop, saving also the photo taken at the end of the pacifist route. To remember that it was possible to get out of the loop. And he knows about those loops, since he and the royal scientist of that time were close or related. And he understood how the human's determination worked. But what if those 3 figures in the photo are the bringers of the light? That will give a whole new meaning to the words "don't forget." But those are not the only words that Deltarune now gives a whole new meaning to. At the end of chapter 4, when Susie and Chris get out of the church's dark fountain, The player will usually go to the left side of the map to make sure that Gerson's grave is still there. And here, a melody that's very familiar to some of us will play, a rearrangement of It's Raining Somewhere Else. You may say that this track is just here because it's emotive and it fits very well with what just happened. But don't you think that something's missing? As I said, this is a rearrangement. This rearrangement is missing Sans' motive. For those who don't know, although if you're part of the Deltarune fandom you're just as schizophrenic as everyone else, both of these games are filled with musical meaning. A good portion of the OST uses and reuses motives, sections, and notes that are related to some characters or concepts in the games. Sans' motive, for example, can be found on 3 tracks, and no, Megalovania is not one of them. The first is the one just called Sans. The second one is an unused track on the game files just called Song That Might Play When You Fight Sans. And It's Raining Somewhere Else. But where am I getting with all of this? The rearrangement playing on Gerson's grave, it's called The Place Where It Rained. You see, it's missing Sans' motive. During the date with Sans, he tells Frisk he could stay here if he wanted, that there was no need to go back to the outer world. We've made a lot of friends here, and there was lots of food and water down here too, but the human wanted to go home, of course, and Sans says that he knows how that feels. But what does that even mean? Well, the music playing when Sans talks about his home, it's called It's Raining Somewhere Else, and the title itself is very nostalgic. It may be implying that it's raining in Sans' home, a place he misses so much. But where is Sans' home located? Snowdin? There is no rain in Snowdin, and we have to remember that the shopkeeper at Snowdin says that those two just appeared out of nowhere one day, and nobody knew where they came from. So where the hell is Sans' home then? It's right here in Deltarune's hometown, the place where it rained. And maybe this track is called this way because something important related to Sans' home happened during a rainy day. And what is Sans doing while this song is playing? He's at Chris's home dancing with Toriel. That also implies that Sans flirting with Toriel back in Undertale, it's not the first time they met, but whatever. You may be wondering, how can we connect this with Gaster, or what does Experiment has to do with all of this? Gaster events on Undertale are determined by a fun value that is assigned at the beginning of each new route, if I recall correctly of course. Thanks to these events and the grey NPCs, we know a lot of things about Gaster, like his full name, that he was the royal scientist previous to office, that he made the core and that one day he failed in his invention and disappeared, scattered across time and space. But there's one more thing we can't find through normal means in the main game. If we modified our game file to position the player inside room 264, a room corresponding to Office's lab, and we try to load the game, we get this glitchy message, infamous with all Gaster related. Entry 17. Dark, darker, yet darker. The darkness keeps growing, the shadows cutting deeper. Photon readings negative. This next experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think? During a long time we had no clear answer to what this even meant, but I want you to pay attention to the words used in that entry. Darkness growing, shadows cutting deeper. And if we take a look to the lyrics of Don't Forget, when the shadow starts to grow, it uses a very similar analogy. Darkness growing, shadows growing. Besides, shadows cutting deeper, and doesn't even remember what was needed to open a dark fountain. We just have to focus and cut the floor with a sharp object. It's very suspicious that these same words and analogies used on both Entry 17 are related to Don't Forget. Besides, the whole fact that this room is completely inaccessible throughout normal means, isolated in the dark, dare I say, Does it mean that the other experiment Gaster was working was a dark fountain or an attempt to replicate a dark fountain? This entrance should have been written when Gaster was still alive, and we assume that these two persons he's referring to are just Sans and Papyrus. That's why those two were related to him somehow, and that might explain Sans's powers. Or he could just be talking with Asgore and Alphys too, and the royal scientist was reporting his findings with the king. But I want to go back with what one of the gunners say. He says that he fell in his experiment and then disappeared. But what exactly is Gaster's invention? The core is just a giant thermoelectric plant. If someone were to fall in there, he would get carbonized, and the determination machine is just a giant creepy syringe. What if the invention in which Gaster fell and what ultimately made him disappear was a dark fountain, and since he was getting rid of all darkness in that room, he became exactly that. Darkness. Pure darkness, yet darker. A shadow, something that is everywhere, watching in silence, just in the corner of our eyes. And let's get back to what Ralsei says. What if it became even darker? Darker than dark. What if it could take away the light that wasn't there, until we reach another side, maybe negative photon readings? If that were to happen, you could start to see things again, and hear them, and feel them. And it's very possible we already know where this other dark fountain is located. When the knight takes Anda into the shelter, we find out there was a fountain of darkness inside it. And this is important because during earlier chapters, we can hear a low grumble noise coming from this place. And if we speed up the audio 666 times, we can hear the same noise that plays on entry 17. There is no doubt that Gaster is related with all of this. It's completely undeniable by this point. What if, in an attempt to create a dark fountain, a place completely absent of light, Gaster became a being completely made of darkness? And does anyone remember what were the Titans made of according to Ralsei? The Roaring Titans are a manifestation of pure energy, created when a dark fountain is opened in the dark world. Absolute darkness. What if that was what fragmented Gaster across time and space, quote-unquote, when he interacted with the dark fountain? He became one with the darkness, or he merged with a Titan and became a Titan, and somehow gained the ability to interact with what happens in the timeline in different ways. And that's without mentioning the ominous voice creating the vessel at the beginning of chapter 1, and the soul fighting against Chris's will. And there's also the thing where, if we fade out some details on the Titan's face at the end of chapter 4, his outer shell blended with his body makes a very familiar face. And I don't think this is a mere coincidence. And in case Gaster is not a Titan, he is affecting the events of Deltarune somehow. I want you to remember the Dark Fragments and the Roaring Knight himself. He seems to be made of the same kind of darkness as the Dark Shards. And also he looks like, well, an amalgamate. He can shapeshift, become a sphere, adopt human form, it has holes on both hands, he seems to have an eye on his stomach, and his helmet is not a solid object. He can even turn into a bird, and the shapeshifting part and the holes in his hands are things very related with the Gaster and the laboratory. There's also the appearance of an amalgamate when Ralsei explains how the dark world works. And speaking of shadow crystals, after defeating each secret boss on Deltarune, we'll get a dark shard. These dark fragments somehow corrupt and liberate those who wield them. Here's where we get the so-called freedom motive. These fragments tend to be hidden or related to beings very dark in nature. One of these was Yevil, closed in the dungeon on chapter 1, who wished to be free from his prison, but also he convinced himself he was free inside his own cell, and that he could do whatever he wanted. The second fragment was supposedly located in Queen's basement, and ended up on Spamton's possession, who wanted to go back to his old days of glory and be free from his current situation. And then there is Gerson that, despite not being a secret boss or corrupted, since he rejected the fragment given to him by the Knight, Gerson's character arc is about helping Susie free himself from the prophecy. And following this thematic, Asgore is also going to be some kind of secret boss for chapter 5, since during the sequence where Chryses rips out his own soul and mentions having a dark fragment, maybe his arc is around letting go of his past and showing Toriel and his sons that he can change his ways and redeem himself of whatever he did. But all of this comes with a price. And if we go with the fact that Gaster is a titan and the titans are made of pure energy, and doesn't even remember what one of Gaster's followers was saying, the thing about his body being scattered throughout time and space, and that he mentions he has a Gaster fragment on his hand. And if Gaster is a titan, and the titans are made of darkness, and the darkness can be shattered and given away in the form of shards, and those shards are the same thing, corrupting and controlling the dark bosses, I don't think there's much left to be said. And you know who else have space-bending powers and is related with Gaster? And is one of the 3 characters with a fun time for name? Sans, or at least a Sans from another point in time, since there is nothing connecting him with Gaster yet, aside from messing with the player, of course. And going back with that, there's also the theory that Undertale is a dark world, but there is not much information to give a conclusive theory on that, so I think that might be it for today. I hope you liked the video, guys, and if that's the case, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. That really helps me and the channel. And remember to leave a comment down below to boost the algorithm and all of that. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.